They were going to
I
rewrite
got
it.
somewhere to be
we'll
here in
blurb
like
it,
45
whatever.
minutes.
It's a record.
Deborah, could you please call the meeting, call the roll call?
Certainly, Vice Mayor Carter. Commissioner Daley.
Here.
Commissioner Vignola.
Here?
Commissioner Simmons.
Here.
City Manager Goodrum.
Here.
Deputy City Manager Whitaker.
Here.
Thank you.
I don't know if I got promoted or not, Mike.
It's on how you look at it.
Call you a city manager?
Yeah, but I answered yes.
Sorry.
If I could have everybody rise for the pledge, and Madam Barron, would you please lead us in the pledge? You. And if we could all take a moment of silence. Thank you. Do we have any public comment regarding this afternoon's meeting?
No.
No register for public comment. Anybody like to speak this evening? Public comment will be closed. And for our meeting regarding the special election, we had discussed a number of dates, and prior to this meeting, I received a call from the new supervisor of elections, Peter, what's his last name? Antonucci. And he had advised us that the school board requires us to pay for they call them gate monitors, ununiformed, maybe or maybe not armed, and that is $960 per location. And I believe that figure came out to be $16,320. It would be our responsibility to hold the election on the March 12th date in conjunction with the other nearby cities. SROs are not allowed to participate. Anything in uniform is not allowed to participate. I had asked him about the potential of waiting for the special election for Moskowitz, and there is no definite date. He expects that it could be April or May if we wanted to consider that as an optional date, but that really, there is no date certain, like we had discussed before, March 12th, March 20th, or June 5th. That would just be out there somewhere in April or May, which I'm not sure is such a good thing to do. I did find it very interesting, the information that Deb sent to all of us with the cities that are having the elections and their number of precincts that they have based on the size of the city, and how many of them were schools. How many are ours for schools? So ours would be the greatest out of all that number, out of what you sent, if I recall. Schools, school locations.
Physically, there are 17 schools.
Interesting. So we are here tonight to make a decision how we are going to proceed with this special election and the date. Do we have a discussion or a motion for a date?
Move that we go forward to March 12th election.
Second.
Commissioner Vignola.
So, I was one that originally talked about moving this to see what we could do to try to give us some more time to see what could happen. I'm sure you guys all made a boatload of phone calls. I know staff made a boatload of phone calls and emails and different things. I was on the phone till late last evening, once again, and then today for a nice little chunk, and we all heard about what happened this morning, the meeting between the school district and the supervisor of elections. Also spoke to our police chief, and I'm sure you guys all have as well. Yes, we're not allowed to have anybody, an SRO, participate, obviously, but in the general area, we could. Our chief feels that they would be able to do the best job they could to keep our kids safe. I also went to a couple schools today and talked to some teachers, and talked to some parents. and everybody feels that if there's a concern for them, they can go ahead and have their kids stay home that day. I think looking at doing this in June, although, that's the other option for us right now, right? And I know Commissioner Simmons had said that he wasn't comfortable with somebody saying that, they're up here without being voted in by the people and making decisions, and we do have a lot of big decisions coming up. Well, to go ahead and do that, and for months, this isn't, just a month or 2 months, this is a lot of things, a lot of big decisions, and potentially 2 seats could end up happening like that. I just think we need to go ahead and try to get someone in here. I know the commission has felt that getting someone up here and appointing was something that was a priority. Well, this would be the fast way to get someone up here that'd be voted in by the residents of Coral Springs. I think that's a priority for me, to make sure that people have the right people up here to represent them, that they get to choose as they chose with all of us. So that's why I like the idea of March 12th. I have 3 kids in schools here in the city. My wife's in the school here in the city. I'm very confident. I've been talking to some of the SROs even, speaking with them after the way they went through it in the primary in August. I feel comfortable enough with my wife and my kids in the schools, so that's why I'm ready to go forward March 12th.
Add to that, when I spoke to Peter, he said that for 2020, they're making sure that the schools will be closed that day.
And is this from you, or?
No, that's what I got from a phone conversation.
Okay.
Deborah?
That is a draft of an email that is expected to come out of the Supervisor of Elections Office this afternoon from John Way, and it summarizes the meeting that was held this morning.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know where that was from.
Commissioner Simmons?
May we ask Mr. Sullivan to kind of give us a recap of just kind of what happened, what's going on? Sure. Maybe even explain some of. Are you able to speak to the costs?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this on? Okay, it's on. Just to clarify some of the remarks. So the cost of the 960, that's on the very high end. After the tragedy at MST, we have to man the gates at all times. The reason it's an additional cost is because right now we only have the gates open during arrivals and dismissals. So we would have to find, and they would be our employees and they would not be armed. Another point of clarification is the SROs that typically would be at that school would still be at that school. So it's not that they wouldn't be guarded per se. It just, I believe the limitation is you can't have too much presence for voter intimidation. But as a function as a SRO during a normal day, they'll still be at the school. Another clarifying about this meeting this morning, we were trying to see if we can get them to move all the elections to the March 26th, because that's during spring break and the kids wouldn't be in school, but that wasn't possible. And again, we did do this in the August primary. The schools were open. Historically, we've always been closed in the general election. Going forward, the board is going to vote most likely on a calendar that going forward we will also be closed for future primaries and general elections as we have been. I think that was it, unless someone has other questions.
Just, we can go ahead and put undercovers in the schools, and that's a very, very important thing, I think, to look at, where it's not voter intimidation, they're not uniformed, but they're just there just in case as a safety precaution, and that's a big reason why I'm okay with doing March 12th.
Cool.
And you know what, there's a lot of kids, and I think that's the best way to do it, to make the best decisions for our residents, can make decisions who represents them, and also to keep our kids safe. And the overall cost of it, I believe, Mr. City Manager, if it's okay, if we can ask him what he thinks the cost would be to put the undercovers in there.
Yeah, I think our estimate would be somewhere around $7,500 to do, unless Chief, I don't know if that number's changed from. Okay.
Simmons?
Mr. Sullivan, the gate monitors, if we wanted to go with our own and you have undercovers and, undercover police officers there, obviously, plainclothes, not interacting with anyone, we don't have to have the gate monitors in.
If the gates are open, our new policy dictates there has to be somewhere there, someone manning the gate. So even if you had undercovers in the schools, we would still have to utilize our staff to cover that gate.
I'd rather the undercover be inside the school anyway.
Well, yeah, but I'm looking at costs, right? So that's on top of the 100, let's say high end 170 170,000, right, for the election, cost of the election, on top of the 16,320 on top of the 7,500, right?
Still less than the extra cost of doing
course,
election
yeah.
some other day. That's
Right. Yeah, I get it. I'm just trying to see.
If I could just add, that email that went out to every municipality that's having a normal municipality election or a special election. So we're asking all the cities who are having polling sites within our schools. It's not unique to Coral Springs. I
Right,
just
right, of
wanted to
course,
add that,
of course.
just to make sure.
Vice Mayor, can I ask? There's schools currently within our city that have gate monitors there during the day as it is.
But most of the time, the gate monitors are staff that already have functions during the school day. They're just out in the gate, again, for arrivals and departures. They're not out at the gate the whole day. If you go to any of our schools now, after that time, you have to call the front desk for them to come out and get you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no further questions.
Commissioner Daley?
Sure, so I just want to jump in for a second on a couple things. The first is, look, we're going to have I'm assuming, a gubernatorial set special election at some point. So I do have a little bit of concern with having multiple elections, just in terms of turnout and otherwise. So my first choice would certainly be to set it at a date commensurate with the gubernatorial special election, or June 5th, whichever occurs first, so that we have that leeway. But I can understand why we want to move forward with that March race as well. What I would ask, if that is the case, and I can certainly get behind, as long as we're going to have the gate monitors and whether we do the additional undercovers or not, let's discuss that, because I'm a little confused if we're supportive of having the additional undercovers as well.
Yeah,
On top of
at
the
a
gate
cost
monitors,
of
right?
about
So as long,
$7,500.
okay, so I can get on board with that, as long as we have both covered. I can certainly get there, and from a cost perspective, it's still less expensive than doing a separate special election
Correct.
date. Now, as you heard Commissioner Vignola allude to, and for those of you that don't follow me on social media, maybe you should, I made a little bit of, just kidding, made a little bit of an announcement yesterday, seeing that our current state representative, Jared Moskowitz, has been nominated to be appointed as the director of the Department of Emergency Management for the state of Florida. That means that his seat in the Florida legislature would be vacant. And seeing that, look, I started working for the Florida legislature at the age of 19. And everything that I know and learned, I learned from then State Representative Ari Porth. And have had the opportunity to continue a lot of the relationships that I was able to build in those years in Tallahassee. And so certainly unexpected, but certainly an opportunity that I would like to pursue. So I announced yesterday that I intend to seek the vacant State House seat, District 97, which means that my seat would be vacant as well. Obviously, I can't have two hats. So with that in mind, what I would ask is that we work to pair what would eventually need to be a special election for my seat. I want to spare the residents any additional expense, right? So what I would hate to have happen is we set a special election for the mayor's seat, then we have to set a special election for my seat. That's a significant cost, and that's a cost that I want the residents not to have to pay. So I would like to see if we can pair the mayor's seat with my seat. Because I'm committed to running. I actually will file here shortly, the next couple days, and begin to run. So, and I'll go into kind of my sappy goodbye at a later date, because this is a special set meeting for a special set reason. But it is my intent to seek that role. I hope to continue to serve not just this city, but the cities in the district, in District 97. And for that reason, I would ask that we pair the races to save the expense.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Sullivan, I have one more question. Of that potential other special election, since that is potentially April or May, would they look to do that on a day that schools would be closed?
If they picked, they would, I'm not sure what days we have off available on those days, but it's very challenging. We have very limited ability to close schools. Our calendars are approved a year out. And also, we comply with mandates in terms of instructional time from Tallahassee, those requirements, and also collective bargaining units. So it's very hard for us to close a day that's already scheduled to be open. We're very limited in our ability to do that.
Didn't you have a spare hurricane day or something?
Those hurricane days, you have to use them for hurricane makeup, so you just can't use them for any days, is my understanding.
Deborah?
I conversed with the supervisor of elections office this morning and learned it's 90 days between elections. So hearing that the governor may call an election for April, the first date that would be eligible is June 10. That would be 90 days from our March 12 election.
At least that we've been given. I think it's unclear whether if the governor orders, they would be mandated to do it earlier. But for municipalities, that date is now June 10th instead of June 5th.
So the hope would be that they would go ahead and announce it for the same date as the other elections around here and save everybody the money, the time, the effort, so we can go ahead and start with those phone calls, just like we've done for the past week and a half. As soon as we leave this meeting, which I would like to go ahead and call the vote if possible.
If we could, though, Vice Mayor, I just want to make sure the motion on the table, Madam Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong. We have a motion to set the special election for March 12th. We have a second. Currently, that motion includes seat 1, which is our previous mayor's vacant seat. If anyone would like to amend that motion to include seat 2, if there is a vacancy for that seat. Currently, there is not a vacancy for that seat because Commissioner Daley has not resigned to run at this point. But if you include that in a motion and the clerk has direction, if there is a vacancy in that seat at the point where she needs to advertise the vacancies, we can go ahead and include that as well.
Include that, I'll amend my motion. You'll amend your second? There we go.
Okay, so you're amending it to include seat?
In case he decides to.
If there's a vacancy in seat 2, at the time the clerk needs to submit the documentation for advertisement, that is the motion to include seat 2. If there's a vacancy, currently there's not.
Then can we go ahead and vote?
So,
When the seat becomes vacant, she will submit.
If the seat becomes vacant.
Right.
Right.
don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to have 2 elections.
Thank you.
So,
You have an amendment. Was it accepted by the maker and the seconder?
Yep, that's what, yeah. So,
Side, call the vote.
a call for a vote. Commissioner Daley?
Aye.
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 Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, although this meeting is adjourned, I would like to remind everybody that it is Pearl Harbor Day. Those that were lost, thank you so much for coming.